You just told me, where do new cells come from? Other cells, pre-existing cells, okay. So they just make a photocopy of themselves? They split? They divide?
Yeah.
They duplicate?
Yeah.
All right. This process of a cell making more cells depends whether it's a prokaryote or a eukaryote. What we do, it's going to depend whether it's a proc or a euc. Prokaryotes, they're going to go about this process through a very simple process called binary fission. And it can be simple because prokaryotes are so simple. They're tiny. No organelles, so you don't have to worry about any of that nonsense getting divided evenly. No nucleus, so you don't have to worry about a nucleus getting divided. They just have to duplicate their DNA and then split in half. Easy peasy. Eukaryotes have to do it a little bit differently. They have a life cycle called a cell cycle, and they use the process that you guys just called mitosis. Now, I thought that first question, that tell me everything you know about cell division question, would have been simpler. Apparently it was a little bit more difficult than I thought it was going to be. So here you go. I'm going to give you and your partner a moment to brain dump this one. The life of a human. You can do it by picture if convenient. Ready, set, go. Well, okay. This process will take different lengths of time depending where you are as a human. This process kind of all takes the same amount of time no matter where you are. This is growth and development. Agreed? Like, when I was in grade school, they didn't call it like health class. They called it human growth and development. And that's what we had to learn, right? And then, basically, they got you through puberty and didn't tell you anything after that. Like, you're supposed to figure it out on your own. Thanks, guys. Could have used some instructions. Once you reached growth and development, you start to reach that, well, I guess we could include this person in growth and development. There's growth and development. You reach kind of this strange place in life that I'll just call stasis. Like, biologically, that's where you are. You age, so you get wrinkles or whatever else happens when you age. But you're not growing and you're not shrinking. Stasis just kind of means stable, steady, status quo. Things are as they are. And ideally in the human life, at that point after puberty, you're collecting things like a college degree, a house, and a spouse. Accurate? And then, after you've collected those things, then you do what?
You make kids. You make kids before
Make babies.
Make more babies. Okay, there you go.
Before you're married. Oh, Dan.
Remember, we said we were collecting a college degree, a house, and a spouse.
And then we made kids.
Yeah.
Yes.
We went in a very specific order there.
No, Dan wanted.
Well, I was saying, what I thought Robert was saying. I thought
Robert,
we
you
were
have priorities, man.
That's right.
And then, old. I mean, what else do you call it? Okay. Let's rename it so as to not offend anyone in that bracket. Eusenes. You enter the sunset years. That sounds awful. Oh. Sorry, it's just old people never really make it sound like fun. Agreed? Okay. My defense.
Living in Florida.
My grandma is old, like old to the like old degree, like she's 99. She doesn't make it sound like fun. She's just like, all of my friends are dead. And I'm like, hey, ball of sunshine, granddaughter sitting right here. And you can go do things. And you can still walk. I'm like, she's got, you know one of those little Hugos?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she's got a Hugo. It's one of those, like, it's like a walker for old people with the hand brakes on it.
Oh, yeah.
A little, like, cart that you toss your groceries in on the front.
Wait, is it like a motorcycle kind of thing?
No, hers doesn't have a motorcycle. Hers is just like the one with like the pad that you walk along.
AJ, she just rides a motorcycle around everywhere.
I'm just saying, you can race a Hugo for the record.
Oh, I broke my grandpa.
If she can't catch me, she can't yell at me.
I think it's also a chair. The seat's like right here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is it a chair?
It looks like a chair. My grandma actually does that now since she's really so immobile. She sits in it and then like kicks her feet and like goes everywhere backwards. Yep. So, pardon me for labeling it old. My view of that age of life might be slightly tainted by a little old Polish lady. We get this cycle, right? We understand it. We know what's coming. We know what we've left behind us. But for a cell, what does that look like? Human life cycle. How long of this life cycle did this human spend replicating compared to everything else it did? What takes more time, the everything else or the replication? Yeah, the everything else, right? Like this took scads of time. This took scads of time. The reproduction part was like tiny. Something like, well, kind of the same. It's going to start its life here. Then it's going to go through this period of growth and development. And then after it goes through growth and development, it's going to physically prepare to divide. Now I'm going to make this comparison that I said this word earlier, and you guys, like your compatriots in earlier hours, seemed horrendously offended by this word, and I'm not precisely sure why yet. Consider this like puberty of a cell. I think somebody earlier was like, worst time of life ever. I was like, whoa, really? It's going to be okay. Got a candy bar at my desk if it's that bad. So consider that this. Now, I say that, here's why. Puberty. You're physically able to divide there, right? Like your body has prepared all of the physical mechanisms for reproduction. Agreed? But it does not mean that you should do so. Correct? Good, I'm glad we had this talk. At S in a cell's life cycle, it's physically preparing its contents for division. It duplicates all of its DNA. So it has all of the material that it needs inside of the nucleus to pass on the necessary genetic messages to its offspring. But just because it can doesn't mean it will. As a matter of fact, it's not going to at this phase. It's not going to divide yet because it, like all good students, took my advice. It enters one more phase of life right there, where it's going to accumulate a college degree, a house, and a spouse first. Does the cell really accumulate those things? Of course not. But it does need to make a certain number of proteins and chemicals and other things necessary for division. It can't just divide without all the necessary materials. So much like it would really be a bad idea for you guys to, because you're physically able to reproduce, it doesn't mean you have all of the material goods to be successful at reproduction. So that's what happens here. Has the material goods, or it has the necessary genetic material, accumulates the material goods necessary, because I heard a rumor somewhere that offspring are expensive. I'm sure ask those people who feed and water you. I'm sure they'll tell you how much you cost. Do they already tell you how much you cost?
Yes.
It's like a guarantee of parenthood. It's like what you have to say. Then, finally, the cell reproduces.
What would happen if the cell reproduced too early?
It can't. It physically is unable. That's the best part. Cells, like I said, like all good students, are excellent listeners. They can't. They physically can't. Now, there's nothing I can do to make you physically not able to listen to me other than stand here in front of you and be like... But you'll all remember that I made that face. Right?
Yes.
Good. I like to be very clear with certain messages. So does Mr. DF, by the way, if any of you have ever had the opportunity of hearing him talk about it. Hilarious. I mean, as hilarious as it can be. Now I want to point something out. In our human life cycle, let's go back. Look at our cell. This is not reproduction. This is living. This is reproduction. Very tiny amount of its life cycle is spent reproducing. Most of the time is the doing other stuff. Now here's what irritates me about this picture. We call this the cell cycle. I don't know about you, but when I hear the word cycle, I think circle. Like, it begins where it ends, and it just keeps going, like the song that never ends. It goes on and on, my friends. Some people started singing it, not knowing what it was, and they'll just keep on singing it forever just because this is the song that never ends, like that song.
What?
You know the number of that?
You don't know that song?
No.
How many of you know that song?
Well,
Oh.
You sang it once.
So I don't like this picture because it's not a cycle. So I redraw it. I know it's actually a circle. But wait, it's easier if we put some labels in here. Those are the same labels that were on our life cycle before. G1 corresponds to gap 1. And that gap 1 is where growth and development occurs. S stands for synthesis. And that's where DNA replicates. So that's DNA replication. And G2 stands for gap 2. Gap 2 is simply where all of the other proteins and chemicals build up that are necessary to be able to successfully reproduce. All three of those pieces together are called interphase. Interphase refers to the period in any cell's life where it is not actively dividing. So it's where it is not actively dividing. So G1, S, and G2, while they are preparing for division, they are not division. So they are not actively dividing. They may prepare for division, but they are not dividing.
For the S, it says synthesis, DNA, and then
Replication.
Oh.
Yep, that's where DNA replicates. Now, we have overlooked something here. You know those people who go about accumulating the house and the spouse, but they never reproduce? Those exist as cells as well. And it's not a bad thing. They go through the growth and development stage, but then they exit the cell cycle. They don't participate in the synthesis thing. So what they do is exit the cell cycle into a phase we call G0, or gap 0. all that means is that they're not going to divide. We'll merge G0 back on here. I like to think of it something like an exit ramp. Like, you know, you can go to a rest stop at the freeway, and that rest stop doesn't go anywhere, but it does allow you to get out of the car, walk around, take a breather, get something from the vending machine if it's not a really bad vending machine, and then get back in the car and keep going. Same thing here. It can exit, live its life, do what it's got to do, then re-enter if it needs. It's not going to. And here's why it's not going to, right? This is the same cycle, right? Exact same thing I just showed you. Except this one has been labeled with what we call cell cycle checkpoints. This is the best way to think about it. It's strange, but I was driving on a Southwestern trip across the country a year and 2 summers ago now. And I'm driving through the middle of Arizona, I think I was at. And suddenly you reach a point in the road where all cars must stop. And you're in the middle of absolutely nowhere. There's nothing there except like this little building. You have to pull over, you have to stop at this building.
Why?
Because it is the Department of Immigration and Homeland Security. They make you roll down the windows, and they make you answer like 10,000 questions. He was really nice. The guy who talked to me, he was originally from Michigan. I'm the kind of person, if you stop me on the side of the road and make me talk to somebody, I'm going to learn your life story. One of those. I'm the lady who gets to know you in the grocery store line. I'm the one who makes faces at kids when they're like in the parents' cart at the butcher counter. Yep, that's me. So, I got to know him. I thought it was quite a fabulous experience. But it seems quite odd, right? It's an immigration checkpoint. And anyone who doesn't pass their series of questions, which were like totally weird and random questions, I'm not sure what they had to do with anything, but...
Wait, what was one question?
Well, one, he asked where we were going. And I was like, that way. Like, clearly, I'm on the road, I'm driving in the middle of nowhere, that way. He's like, well, what's your intent? Well, my intent is to go to Saguaro National Park. You know, the cacti that, like, look like that are, like, the classic Bugs Bunny cartoon cacti. I wanted to go see those. So, yeah, that's where I was going. He didn't seem to understand the fascination with seeing them. What's wrong with him? He stands in the middle of the desert all day. He doesn't know why I want to go look at a cactus. I didn't ask him that, though. Probably would have got me stuck there much longer than I was. Too cute. Then he asked if I had any snacks in the car. I did. I had some green chili pistachios, so I shared those. They were quite delightful. I'm a giver. And then it devolved from there into complete nonsense. Just like complete nonsense. But you know what he's there for. He's there to make sure that everybody there is, legally in the country, which I really didn't understand because I was nowhere near any border at all. Like.
So, you shared your snacks with your dad?
Yeah.
And he let you? Because, there might be some bad people that might try to poison him or something. If they're
No!
So what are you allowed to accept?
You know the last time I went through customs at the airport, do you know what the guy told me? I was upset he didn't take longer interviewing me to come back into the country. Like, that's rude, right? He's like, you're free to go, man. And I'm like, excuse me? You didn't even ask me any questions. My husband's like, shut up. Shut up. Just go. You do realize his job is to not get your friend. And I was like, and he looked at me, he's like, ma'am, you're possibly the least threatening person I've ever seen. And then I was like all offended. I was like, excuse me. I am not very threatening, but that's not the point. I am worth talking to. I know, you're like, oh my god, people let you in public? I don't know why. So, but you know what he's there for. You know what the customs guide is there for. They're checkpoints. They're security checkpoints. And you can't go past them until you pass security. security checkpoints. And you don't go past it unless you pass security. Now here's the problem though. Those security checkpoints that I went through, you're just detained, right? They just keep you. You get like those little plastic bracelet things, right?
Wait, they actually put those on?
Yeah, like the little twist tie things that you're pretty sure are actually meant to use like cable ties.
Yeah.
Those are for people. But apparently they are. They detain you, right? They keep you. Well, typically they keep you because you're doing something that's less than legal, which is probably not a great choice.
What? Oh, wait. You didn't have to wear wait.
No.
Oh,
I've never
Yes, Rob, she got detained.
As the guy at Customs said, you are possibly one of the least threatening looking people I've ever seen. Yes, so I've never been detained. But that's what they do. They detain you. They keep you. Worse for cells. If you don't pass the security checkpoint at a cell, and it's not like a quick fix, if it's not something very simple, dun dun dun, yeah, you die. So what happens to the cells that try to divide at the wrong time? Dun dun dun, they die. That's how they can't divide at the wrong time, because they don't make it past the checkpoint. Why? Because something called apoptosis happens. Apoptosis sounds fancy. Really, all apoptosis is what we call, as biologists, scheduled cell death. So you reach a checkpoint, you don't pass it. There's something wrong with you. You're not good enough. So they mark you for death. They just put a little label on you, and then you go to the little factory where you die, and you're dismantled. Taken apart. Your pieces are reused. Uh-huh. Except they're not robots, they're your cells.
Oh yeah, I love that movie.
It's like the book on
It's a great movie. The guy comes. What are you, robot?
And then you finally, like, the best part of the movie is when you down.
And then they gotta turn up upgrades.
Oh yeah, I remember the big guy.
Aren't you glad that doesn't happen at Customs?
Chop chop.
Exactly. That would be awkward. Hey,
Hey,
how are you?
are you Mr. Dickey?
No.
Okay then.
Sorry?
Hey, I read your great news from Rod on Facebook.
Oh, Mr. Dold. So each checkpoint is looking for a different thing. The first checkpoint that occurs during G1 is a checkpoint that's making sure that it's allowed to grow. Like, is it a cell that should go through G1? If it's not a cell that should go through G1, if there's something wrong with it, if it's flawed, if it's broken, then it dies. This is horrible. It really just sounds dreadful. Please don't personify the cells. It makes it sound very eugenics-like. If there's a problem in S what they're doing is making sure that all of the DNA is healthy. So its job is to make sure all of the DNA is healthy. If it's not, the cell dies. You notice a trend here. G2 checkpoint is checking the accuracy of replication from synthesis. If a mistake is made in copying, if something gets left out, if something gets modified or edited, the cell dies. And if during mitosis something happens, so during that metaphase checkpoint, it's not aligned properly for division, the cell dies. These are all just guarantees that the cell is not going to cause disease. Now, this does not mean that diseases aren't caused.